just jump right in by saying thank you so much for joining us here on the Elevated Life podcast, Miriam. We're so excited to dive into your 5-step framework around turning your passion into profit, because that's something that's really important here on the Elevated Life, is helping people to align with what they love to do and making a difference doing it. And I feel like you shine a beautiful example.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here.
Literally so excited about your story, because I feel like when reading through your book, Artpreneur, I feel like there's like this beautiful balance of masculine driven hustle meets feminine flow and creativity. And I feel like you just bring a beautiful light to what it looks like to be able to do both. Can you share a little bit about your story on how you got started? I know you got labeled as an artist young, but ended up taking a logical path and going to Wall Street. So can you talk a little bit about how that journey has unfolded for you?
Yeah. So what Britt, you're referring to, I'm just so for sharing with the listener who hasn't read my book. So when I was in 4th grade, my teacher declared me the quote, air quotes, class artist, which really meant nothing because it had nothing to do with any so-called talent. My job was to glue toothpicks on a pumpkin. And she told me where to put the toothpick. So it's not like I had done these drawings in my notebook and she saw none of that. But what happened was she said I was an artist. I chose to believe her and I took on that identity. Now, why didn't I become an artist at first is because I was being told by everyone around me, you couldn't make a living that way. And I believed them. And I came from a single parent household. My father passed away when I was 5 years old. When my father passed away, my mother had not finished college yet. So she was not prepared to raise 2 kids on her own. She did finish college eventually, but growing up that way, seeing my mother's very 1950s values, and a rejection of that was that I did not want to do that. I wanted to be financially independent. So that was a big driver for me. And it still is, which is why when I did finally make the leap into becoming an artist, it was important to me that I thrive that way, that I was not dependent on anyone else or anything else.
Wow. It's amazing because I think as not only entrepreneurs, but as being creatives, one of the big things that you butt up against, and the biggest thing that I see, because we are not lacking talent. The world right now is not lacking talent. There's so many people out there who have so many gifts. But what I do find out a lot of times is we lack the courage. There's some sort of limiting beliefs that we hold on to that prevents us from actually pursuing a life that the one that we're meant to be in. So can you talk a little bit about some of the limiting beliefs that entrepreneurs or artists have as they go out from the world? Because a lot of us have been sold in the idea that there's some sort of security in corporate America, or there's some sort of security in a quote stable job, whatever in the world that means. Even though I think over the last couple of years, we found out that people can get let go very easily, that life can change very quickly. And I think that it's an amazing time right now for artists to wake up, because we live in a time where getting online, finding a platform where you can sell from, it's not just opening the trunk of your car in front of a gas station anymore. We've got new outlets, luckily. And so can you talk a little about some of those limiting beliefs and how entrepreneurs can grab onto some of what the world is now providing for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few things there. You mentioned like the courage. So one part is just having that self courage to want to do the thing. But another really big part of it is there's a lot of shame, especially for artists, that we should want to make money from our art. And this is especially true for women, because women are being told that they shouldn't want money at all. Like we were given that message from a very young age. Like we asked little girls, "Oh, you look so cute," and little boys says, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Yep. So it's and the conversations that we have with our children are very different depending on how you were raised, whether you were raised as a boy or a girl. It's very different. So there is that, but just in general, there is so much that the universities, the art world does a big disservice to artists by teaching them that it's wrong to want money for our art and that we shouldn't want that, or you're not a real artist. if you make money from your art, or if you want that, or if you're going after that. And it couldn't be further from the truth. I recently had Jeff Goins on my podcast. He's the author of Real Artists Don't Starve. And he was sharing with me that Michelangelo basically died with the equivalent of what would be today $50 million. He actually was very wealthy from his art, not from his family wealth. So this is one of the greatest artists ever. He went very deliberately marketing himself and going for it. There is something else that you shared that I just want to say, and that is, it isn't about talent. And that's the other thing that we are being sold from art schools and the art world, is that, oh, you just have to be good and people will notice you. Just work on your art. And the sad thing, the sad truth is that we all know very talented people who aren't thriving in every industry, whether we're talking about coaching, even podcasting, photography, painting, whatever it is, very talented people who don't thrive. And yet we see people with less talent who are at the top of their fields. And we're like, I don't get it. What's so good about her?
It's interesting because I feel like so much of it has to do with the belief system. And one of the beliefs that you talk about is just starting before you're ready. Can you talk about how you were forced, maybe by the universe, to start before you were ready?
Yeah. So a lot of times people want to have it all perfect first. And if that's you, don't beat yourself up. This is the way we have evolved. Our primitive brains have evolved for survival, not goal achievement. So anytime we're going to do something new or uncomfortable, what's going to happen is our brains, we sense this fear for doing something that's a little bit uncomfortable. That's our survival mechanism. So when we sense this, our brain will come up with all kinds of reasons, all kinds of stories about why this is a terrible idea. Terrible. And they don't feel like excuses to us. They do not. They feel like, oh no, this is the facts. This is what I'm observing in the world. Now's not a good time to sell art. There's a recession looming, or it's a pandemic, or any of these things that hold us back. So not feeling ready is a very common one, but you're never going to feel ready. Why? Because readiness isn't a feeling. It isn't. And it's just kind of like learning how to walk. Babies, they just start doing it. They're not ready to walk. They fall down. And the mom doesn't say to them, you know what? I don't think this walking is for you. But these are the things we say to ourselves when we don't have success the very first time.
Yeah, it seems like we as artists and just humans in general are our biggest critics and our biggest enemies. And, you talking about charging for your art really essentially boils down to that feeling of worthiness and believing that we're, able or open to receive. One of my favorite quotes of all time, and I was sharing before the podcast that Georgia O'Keeffe has really set the tone for my confidence with this quote. And she said, "That's it. I've settled it for myself. And all compliments and flattery and criticism go down the same drain, and I am quite free." And that has really set the tone for not needing someone else's approval or their judgments, because I feel like, for so long we fear being judged by other people. Well, what will people think? Or is this good enough? And then that's where perfectionism kicks in, which ties into a fear of not being lovable. So it's like this whole full circle, we don't express our unique magic in the world because we're afraid of being judged. We're afraid of not being good enough. So can you speak to the people that have this beautiful gift inside of them? Because if you think about the word earth, it has art written in the middle of it. So we all have this unique, I call it sparkle magic. I'm sure other people have other words for it, but just this unique, authentic essence to bring to the world. Can you talk a little bit about how that ties into worth and being open to receive? Because, what's the difference between, you mentioned in your book, $5 panties and $50 panties? How is it that we can value things differently and put that, I don't know, I guess value is the right word. How does that tie into our psychology of valuing art?
Yeah, so much of it is just somebody decided this is what it should cost. And I mean, we're talking also, even with the panties, okay, you can go to Walmart, you can get a 10 pack for $14.97 of Hanes that really are identical in quality to the Victoria's Secrets that you buy 5 for $30, which isn't that much different or better to some of the ones that cost a heck of a lot more. And then really, is it worth $500 for a La Perla panty? Maybe. I don't know, it might be. So some things, so there's a lot of factors that go into how the psychology of not just of the selling. We always think about that. It's the psychology of the person buying. So there's lots of things where people value more if the price is higher. So example of that would be electric cars, Chanel bags, and our artwork. So a lot of collectors will value it more simply because you put a higher price on it.
Well, the other thing, I want to switch gears really quick because it's really important to talk about the mindset. But one of the big factors that comes into entrepreneurs or anyone who moves from a very structured environment into something where they plan their day. So no one tells them when to wake up. They don't have to wear a certain outfit to work. They don't have to put on makeup. They don't have to do whatever is that normal, hey, you get off at 5. What would you say about someone trying to figure out moving to a full-time art career and trying to master productivity, trying to figure out like, oh, well, now I could just, at 2 o'clock, I don't have anything to do. I worked really hard for 30 minutes. And so now I found this new Netflix show that I want to see. Now I got to get going to that. How do we overcome our maybe want and desire sometimes to just sit and do nothing? Like how do we as artists make it so that like, shit, I'm actually turning out work and the work that I'm producing is good and I'm enjoying doing it? How do you reconcile that?
There's so many great things I can unpack right here. So the first thing is that the reason I'm successful is I honor my calendar. So I decide at the beginning of each week, I'll look at everything that I have to do. For example, this podcast interview, I'll have things already plugged in that nobody can book with me, like my, lunchtime, exercise. So I have some things pre-planned, and I have my work blocks, but the work blocks don't just say vague things like work. If you look at my work blocks, there'll be very specific things written in it, like, photograph 10 paintings or redo the webinar or record a podcast. Like, it'll be very specific. And I treat those appointments that I've made with myself with the same reverence as I would if it was an appointment I made with somebody else, like a dentist appointment. So that doesn't mean if your child is sick or your dog throws up on the rug, that doesn't mean that you can't not do the thing you said you were going to do and clean up those messes or deal with the people, but you reschedule that appointment you made with yourself. That's what I mean by you honor your calendar. Now, there was something else I wanted to unpack. There was like a multi-part question, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just about how do you think about structuring your day?
Yeah.
Like
okay. So
being productive.
We talked about our primitive brain has evolved for survival and also really for pleasure. Avoid pain, seek pleasure. So it's not that if you had more hours in the day, you would get more done, because we only have a limited amount of energy. And more hours in the day usually means red wine and Netflix for a lot of people. What I find has always helped me motivate is by creating creating publicly declared deadlines for myself. So as artists, that could be an art show. There's nothing better than an art show to help you get your shit together. Because it just forces you, like, okay, what do you have to do by then? You have to have a collection ready. You have to send out invitations. So that means you have to make sure your mailing list is up to date. So having something like that you are doing, even if it's an open studio that you're hosting in your living room, it doesn't matter to have something like that. Other things that I've done throughout my career, maybe because I've declared publicly, oh, my online art class is launching next month, and start taking money for it. So holding myself publicly accountable for things has really helped with creating that kind of external structure. And then, of course, there are things like having accountability buddies or mastermind groups or a coach to help push you that makes a big difference.
Yeah, so productivity is one of the 5 core elements in your passion to profit framework. Can you share a little bit about how you created this framework and how it shows up in your life on a day-to-day basis, or just why you've created this framework?
Yeah. Okay. So there's 5 areas that helps every business thrive. And it doesn't matter whether you're selling sneakers or photography or art. It doesn't matter what you're selling. And that is production, meaning what are you producing for sale? Is it website design? Is it whatever it is? What are you producing? And looking at what your capacity it is to produce it. So I just spoke with an artist today, and he told me that he creates this art that he's selling for $200 each. And I was asking about production, his capacity. And he says it takes 10 hours to make that artwork. And I says, well, what do you think needs to change so that you could produce more art? He says, quit my job. I said, and he told me his goal is 80,000 a year. I said, well, you do see that if you are creating art 40 hours a week, you can only make 4 of these $200 paintings, which is $800, which is not going to get you to $80,000. It's going to get you to 40,000, like half. So quitting a job isn't going to help you produce more. So I like to do that exercise with my clients. I say, what are you producing? What's your capacity? And what are you pricing it at? And something very often has to change with those 2 things. So we said the first thing is production. The second thing is pricing. And those 2 work hand in hand. And just doing that simple math, a lot of people realize, oh, either I have to raise my prices or have to create something different. So a common example are people who are making stickers. Can't raise your prices to $100 per sticker, but maybe you shouldn't be selling stickers. So these are the kinds of questions you need to ask with your production. What are you producing? Is it something that can be priced high enough for you to make a sustainable living? And then the pricing works hand in hand with that. And then, as we've already talked about with the pricing, there are a lot of things that are going to get in the way with your mindset so that you can think like an abundant artist. That's why in Artpreneur, I go through 14, like basically it's like, turning a diamond around and looking at all the different facets, what goes into how you price anything. So we have pricing, production pricing. Next is prospecting. Where do you find these people who will spend more money for your high-end sneaker, whatever it happens to be? So, and in most cases, this is building an email list. So again, going back to our examples, some people think, oh, if only I had a bigger audience, that will solve my problem. I was like, no, your problem is that you have to work 40 hours a week to produce $800 worth of art. So fix that first. So sometimes people don't realize what their problem is. They think it's one thing, it's something else. So we said pricing, production, prospecting, then it's promotion. How are you going to sell? And then finally productivity, which is different than production. Production's your capacity, what you're producing. Productivity is really about your focus, having systems in place, having help, those sorts of things.
You were touching on a lot of really important things that I think that it's easy to gloss over, especially if you're new, and that is the importance of a coach, the importance of someone who's been there, and to do, because a lot of that, when people want the tips are always really simple. It's always really basic stuff. The coaches, as Dan Kennedy said, the coach is supposed to ask you the dumb questions, who, if they had no clue what you're doing, they're just standing there going, well, that doesn't make sense. How come you're doing it? Just like the money example. But for some reason, as entrepreneurs, it's tough for us to see. I don't know if we walk around with blinders on, but I will tell you, and everyone listening, that the importance of a coach cannot be dismissed. Now, you touched on something else that's really interesting, and I want to talk about it because a lot of people put so much of their eggs in the social media basket. And I want to talk about the difference between having social media and having an actual email list of people who give a shit about your product and your services and what you're doing and care about you and what your dog's doing and all. Can you talk about why the email list is by far the most important thing as a business you can be building, and why social media, while it's good, might be the golden goose you think it is?
Yeah, I love this question. So when I wrote my book, Artpreneur, the first time I handed in the manuscript, I got back from the developmental editor, and she was like, she didn't really talk about social media because she's old fashioned and she's in her 50s. And I guess she doesn't know how to use it. And when I got those comments back, I realized, oh, I didn't make a strong enough case for why social media is outdated and it's not old fashioned, that this is not the reason. So when I first started writing the book, the average engagement rate on Instagram, we'll use Instagram because that's a platform that visual artists tend to prefer. The average engagement rate on Instagram was 1%. By the early 2022, when I went to edit that section of the book because of the developmental editors, I redid that research. It had fallen to 0.6%. I just want to make this clear for people who aren't mathy. Out of 1,000 people, that means only 6 people are going to be engaging with you. Now, what about these influencers? There's so many influencers that want to teach you how to get better engagement. The average engagement rate for an influencer is only 1.12%. That means for an influencer, it's still only 11 people out of 1,000. Okay, so now let's compare that to email. If you have 100 people on your email list, the average open rate is 24%, which means out of 100 people, 24 people will open it and see your painting, photograph, high-end sneakers, whatever it is you're selling. To get 24 people on Instagram to see your high-end sneakers, you need 4,000 people because of the percentages. So you have 100 people on your email list or 4,000 humans on Instagram. That's comparing things the same. And this is based on research from 2022. I imagine those numbers and that difference has only grown over the last year.
And also, like, if you're like me and you have 30,000 people on your Instagram get deleted, and what do they extort me for money to get my account back? So, like, I had to fall back on my email list and I didn't sweat it so much. Yeah, I spent 12 years on that platform, growing my account, sharing my art, sharing my heart, sharing literally all the things which I couldn't get back, sharing my dad passing away. I can't get those things back. But from a business perspective, I was like, it's cool. I've got an email list. So I think, your philosophy on marketing, when I was reading through the book, I was like, yes, queen, like, preach, because the social media bullshit is just got to stop. And the way that it's set up and the algorithms and all of that. I mean, we hear that word all the fucking time, but just to your point, there's the numbers, there's the proof. It really is a problem as far as getting, like, we go stand outside and, put our art on the side of the street and get more people looking at it.
Right. That's right. It's basically like, so I want to share you some more recent examples. And yes, to your point, people's accounts get hacked, deleted, shut down all the time, and there's no help desk over there. But here's the thing. We always want to blame the algorithms. It's not even the algorithms. People are not on the platforms the way they used to be. So when I was promoting the book, I thought that I would use Instagram Live as a strategy. And I have friends who have huge followings. I thought we'd get together and do a live. Right before you hit live on Instagram, it will tell you how many of your followers are on the platform. Not tuning into you, that's later, actually on the platform, available to tune into you. So out of 25,000 followers, what would you guess how many people are on the platform?
468.
You're close with 68. The most I ever had was 65, not tuning into me, but available to tune into me.
There it is.
It's pathetic. And
folks,
they're all on TikTok now.
No, wait. Then now the issue is not to switch to TikTok. So TikTok, it's even worse because TikTok, you can follow someone on TikTok and never see their content ever again. So there are people who have millions of followers and nobody knows who they are. So I had, my book has done really well. And unfortunately, one of my peers at HarperCollins who published a book, I don't really know her well, but I only know this story and I won't say who it is. I only know the story because the marketing team came to me and said, would you put this woman on your podcast and she'll put you on your TikTok? She has 500,000 people on TikTok. and I looked at her TikTok. I was like, oh, that's not a fair trade. There was like only 50 likes on a post. She's like followers over there. People just don't care. And I said, it's not a fair trade for me to do a TikTok that 50 people will see. It's kind of like an Instagram live. No one's going to see it again. Who cares? I mean, if I loved her content, I wouldn't have cared about her social media following. And it's not that her content was bad. It just wasn't that. It was about how to make a career pivot to a different career in corporate America. I was like, this is not for me, but my point is that it's not about switching platforms. I think it's even worse over there. I call it the death of the scroll. So whether it's Reels or YouTube Shorts or TikTok, all of those short form videos are designed to get you to scroll to the next one. And they don't even let you finish really the video before they're like shaking and you're trying to get you to scroll on. So nobody is stopping to engage with the creators. They don't know who they're following on there. They don't know what stuff they're watching on there. And I'll have artists who will make a reel literally go viral, like 47,000 views, barely even got picked up new followers, and definitely didn't sell anything from it.
It's so crazy. I always say, if you're in business, you're in the business of marketing, no matter what your service is. And I use the example of Snuggie. Everyone knows what the fuck a Snuggie is. And we all know how shitty quality it is. It's not good. It's just a piece of shit. And everybody probably at one point owned it. And why? Because of marketing, because they put their information out there. They fucking blasted it enough during Christmas where everyone's grandma bought them one. So can you talk to marketing meets the artist? Because earlier we were saying how you could be so great at what you could do. You could have the best product in the world, but if nobody knows about it, then you're going to be over there self-doubting, probably not paying your bills and all the things. So can you talk about how, if you're going to be an artist, inherently, you're going to be in marketing? I feel like every book on my shelf is either spirituality or marketing. And it's like, how do I take my spirituality and share it with the world and like market it to the people? So can you talk a little bit about how that is inherently a part of the job? Just like being a hairdresser, we're now photographers and therapists. Like, it's just built in. Like, can you talk about how the marketing is?
And yeah, let's just back up. It's not that now it's part of the job. It's always been part of the job.
Well, now we're realizing it.
So hundreds of years ago, we can go back to Rubens. He's an artist from the Netherlands. And he, very, very famous. You go to the museum, he's in the Rijksmuseum, whatever. So hundreds of years ago, he was marketing. What was he doing? He was a diplomat. He knew that the borders were going to be closed and it would be very difficult for him to get the kind of commissions in the way he was getting it before. So when that was happening, he had engravings made of his art and had that distributed to the crown princes across Europe. So basically he made flyers, like that's what he was doing. And this is right. And this is how he got commissions from all the royal families across Europe. This is marketing. This is something that's 400 years ago, he was marketing himself. So it's nothing new. We all have to market.
Can you talk about some of the ways that you're marketing your art at this point, like where we're at today?
Yeah. So absolutely the direct mail piece, meaning the quote unquote, the flyer, the postcard, this works. Now it works even better than it did when I first started 20 years ago. Why? Because nobody's using the mailbox anymore. And there's no spam filter on your front door. So I've had clients who have gotten into galleries using the postcard technique. I use this over and over and over again for everything. I have an in-person event. I can identify who are my 100 hottest prospects for this. So I have a big mailing list. I'm not going to send a mail piece to 20,000 people, but a lot of us can identify who are those 100 to 200 people who are most likely to buy from you again. Somebody's bought from you in the past or do it again. So that is one of my favorite ways, is actually using direct mail.
I love this because before what we do now, I was in real estate, and a lot of people thought that I did real estate, but the reality is that 90% of my job was spent marketing, knocking on doors, trying to go and find houses. Like it was such a marketing game. And it was in that moment that I realized that if you're good at marketing, if you're good at sales, and you can ditch any kind of confidence issues that you have. As long as you can skip on the confidence stuff, you can literally write your own check. I mean, once you get better at marketing, once you get better at understanding what your prospect wants, what they need, what they sit up late at night thinking about, once you start to understand the psychology of not you and not what you produce, but how that production touches the lives of other people and what that offers them, as an artist, you can do incredible things, because all of us have been to concerts. You can have a person with a mediocre voice. We were just at a fresh market, like we buy vegetables and stuff. And there was a girl out there who did not have a perfectly trained voice by any stretch of the imagination. And I will tell you, the audience was hooked. How she made us feel inside was something that you can't do no matter what other thing you offer. I mean, she spoke to both of us, and we went up there and talked to her afterwards. We're like, holy shit, like how can we hire you? Like what is going on? So as an artist, can you talk about how important it is to connect with your audience, and what are a couple of ways that people can start to begin to do that? Maybe in the languaging, maybe in the visual of what they do. Like, how can we let people know that we've got inside of us something that they're yearning for?
Yeah. So Britt kind of touches the beginning. A lot of people want to people please. They want it to be perfect. They don't want to offend people. They don't want to fail. One of my favorite chapters in my book is embrace your inner weirdo. And the word weird is actually, it's a Scottish word. And hundreds of years ago, it didn't mean the same thing it did today. So that's why Macbeth called the witches in Macbeth. Shakespeare called the witches in Macbeth the weird sisters, because it meant fate, destiny, and magic. And what happened was, as the supernatural became vilified, the word weird took on a negative connotation. So when I say embrace your inner weirdo, I'm telling you to embrace those parts of you that are different, that embracing your fate, embracing your destiny, and embracing what makes you magical. And that's not about being perfect, because, like, as you pointed out, like, Janis Joplin does not have a perfect voice.
Yeah, she does.
Well,
Yeah.
because it's perfect because it's emotional.
Yeah.
Passion.
Right? It's about, she was the music. It's not that the voice was quote unquote perfect. She was the music. She allowed those idiosyncrasies to be there. And that's what you're drawn to. That's why you're saying, oh, no, that is perfect.
Yeah.
Right. And too many of us, we want to polish away all those rough edges, and then we lose that magic.
It's, oh, that's so good. It's making me think about, like, people who have writer's block, or they feel like they're in a funk, or they feel like they get stuck, or they're uninspired. Do you have any, like, practical tips or tricks that you do to help get that flowing again?
Yeah. So I faced this with my book. So
Yeah.
when I signed my contract, just as we said earlier, I was like, oh my God, this was a huge mistake. I do not know what I'm doing. I better just give my money back right now. So what I said to myself every day was ass and chair, ugly words. And I tell the artists who come to me the same thing. A lot of them, they're not ready to believe in the result yet. So that prevents them from showing up. I said, but if you believe in your ability to take action, believe in that. And I believed in my ability to take action. And sometimes that's all you need to do. It's kind of like Julia Cameron said, you show up and do the work, let God, let the universe, let the divine take care of whether it's good or not. You just show up and do it.
I love that. Someone once said in my goddess gatherings, where I collect all the weirdos from my community, she said, if I'm inspired, which inspire means, spirit within, if I'm inspired with an idea, then I have to trust that it'll be brought to fruition in a beautiful way, as it's meant to. So I need to stop judging it and stop putting so much, like, criticism on it. It reminds me also of Dan Kennedy says something to the effect of, like, write 10 sloppy pages a day. 10 sloppy pages, and eventually you'll get something. And I felt that way when I was writing the guidebook for my Oracle deck. It sounds like what it really boils down to is fucking discipline. You just have to get your ass in the chair and show up, whether it's flowing or not flowing, or in the mood or not in the mood. Because some days I'd sit down and I'd be like, oh my fucking God, it's never gonna finish. Like, we're never gonna I'm only on card 20. How am I gonna get through this? And then some days I'd sit down and write 10 cards in a row, just boom, 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 boom. Like it comes through me. And I really think discipline is what it boils down to. I'm so grateful I played sports since before kindergarten growing up, because I think that discipline is what helps me to show up and keep being of service to the inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much about just showing up. And again, about when I was writing the book, I spoke to one of my podcast guests was Dr. Eric Maisel. He's a creativity coach. And I said to him, I understand the whole concept of shitty first draft, but, I'm really struggling with this. And what he said to me, I'll never forget. And this is really what helped me was he said, you have to understand the concept of shitty first book. Shitty first book. And that's what got my ass in the chair every day. Being not that it was going to be shitty, but you have to be willing to do the work, whether it's going to be great or not. You show up and do the work.
Once you've mastered discipline, it seems like the next big thing for people to start mastering is what do they do once they're burnout? Like, what do you do once I've produced 1 million pieces? I've sold a bunch. Maybe I've made a little jingle in my pocket. We're starting to gain some recognition, but I'm just feeling like, ugh, my whole body's just like, holy shit, I need a break or I need something. What do you recommend that people do? Because as artists, I know we all burn out. It's just one of those things that you have to like deal with and have a plan for. What are some of the things that you recommend that people do as they start to burn out?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. And I'm sure you'll relate to this as being spiritual people. So we all have two souls. We have our creative soul and our sacred soul. And if we're only focusing on the sacred, on the creative part, the output. So the creative soul is what puts out the art, puts out our stuff, creating, and we neglect the sacred soul. That's what leads to burnout. Sacred soul is not about doing, it's about being. And it's just like being a farmer. You got to let that field rest. You can't keep planting more things. So for me, I love travel. I love having lunches with friends. I like going to museums. This all became very difficult for me during the pandemic. And a lot of us really struggled. We had all this extra time, but our creative wells were dry. So unfortunately, thank God, like we're past that and moving past that now. But yeah, you have to take care of the sacred soul, the being.
That's such a beautiful piece of advice. One of the things that comes up so much at my goddess retreats is inner child healing and the play that's involved in that healing process. And what you just mentioned spoke to my inner child, was like exploring new cultures, seeing new things, adventure, just like taking yourself from being of service to the world and being served by the world.
Yeah, I also just find that being in motion, the part of the travel where you're actually in motion, where you're on a plane, on a train, something is very healing to me about that. That really helps me go on that journey to fill up my creative well.
So what is in that well for you now? What are you curious about? What are you working on? Like, where's your heart and soul at this point in time?
Yeah, I believe it or not, I never thought I was going to say this. I am thinking about what that second book is, which is probably going to be about creativity and spirituality. So those concepts I just shared about sacred soul and creative soul, that wasn't in my book. When I wrote my book, I thought, oh my God, I'm never doing that again. It was like being pregnant with an elephant. It took 2 years and a very painful elephant birth. No, elephants are pregnant for 22 months.
Yeah, I actually looked that up while I was taking 2 years to create the Oracle deck. So I 100% am on that train with you.
Yeah,
And
I was just like, I'm never doing this again. Oh my God. And now that it's like done and I have this cute little baby elephant, it's like childbirth. No, like, yeah, let's do it again. But the thing is, Britt, that happened to me is that I actually in some ways miss the pain, if that makes sense. I also miss, this may have happened to you, where when I was creating, I found myself being a channel for more ideas that didn't happen when I wasn't writing the book. So I loved being that channel for every, things that were happening around me. Suddenly I was like, having ideas and making connections that I don't think I would have seen had I not given myself that challenge. So that's where I'm thinking of next.
Oh, I feel like that's confirmation, because I was literally asking myself, am I crazy for starting Oracle deck number 2 next month? Like, am I absolutely nuts? And here we are having this
Here's
conversation.
your sign.
Here we are. I guess
This is your
I
sign.
guess we're here to birth another fucking
That's
elephant.
right. Here's your second elephant.
Oh, it's so funny because I definitely looked up the birth process of an elephant and was blown away by that. And I held on to that for a long time, like, because I kept saying, why do all my creations take 2 years? Why do all my creations take 2 years? Because creating Shine School, my first online course, taking Amy Porterfield's, like online course academy, like took 2 years to create. Oracle deck, 2 years to create, bringing the retreats together. It's like 2 years, 2 years. But what I realized in looking back with hindsight is that I'm a wife, I'm a me, I'm a salon owner and hairstylist, I'm a coach, I'm a this, I'm a that. I'm like a lot of fucking hats. So I can only imagine, knowing that you have actual children, how it is to balance all those different aspects of yourself. Can you speak on that just a little bit, on how you're able to manage home life, family life, your entrepreneurial life? Like, it's a lot.
Okay.
It really is.
All right. So I haven't worn all the hats at the same time. Like, the hats are in my closet. I can pull out the hats when I want to and put them on. I've been in business for 20 years. So these children are now 25 and 22. So things have looked different over the years that I've been in business. And one thing that I recommend all my clients do, whether they have kids or not, is to get what I call a business babysitter. So what's a business babysitter? A business babysitter is simply a teenager who you pay babysitting wages to do that grunt work in your job that doesn't need to be done by you. So you can spend maybe 10 hours a week, whether that's with your children or doing something that fills your creative well.
Yeah. The other big thing I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned a little bit before, and that is, how important is it to surround yourself with amazing people, especially as you get into business, especially as you want to move from where you are in business, maybe in leapfrog the next level? How important are the people, or what you're reading, or what you're surrounding yourself with? How important is that, and how big of a difference can that make for a person?
You're asking how important it is. It's the most important thing.
Yeah.
The investment I do in my relationships is the number one thing that I do. I mean, I actually, you said I said earlier, I have lunch with my friends. It's not just random. I mean, like, I do the work of curating lunches in New York City. That was pre-pandemic. Now that world's opening up, I actually do it in my apartment. That's one of the big reasons I moved to New York City. I wanted to like host dinners. I find the relationship capital is like rocket fuel. There's nothing more important. And some of the investment I do is my time. And sometimes it's been with my money. If there is a community I want to join, I will invest money in it. And like my mom and my husband tease me that I'm buying friends, and it's sort of true. But like, to meet high quality people, they may not always be in your physical community, or you may not know where they are. So it's been very important for me to invest in masterminds, in communities, in business coaches, so that I can tap into their networks. It's like the most important thing.
Yeah.
I feel like as entrepreneurs, this gets glossed over. No one hardly ever talks about it. I mean, I know that the high end people are doing it.
Yeah.
They've known about it. They've been doing it from the beginning.
Well, if you think about Playboy, I mean, that was a mastermind from the jump. He delegated everything to every aspect of that magazine. He delegated to people who were good at what they do, and he got to sit back and just be the visionary.
Yeah, for me, every single big change I've made in my life has been because someone's come into my life. And it's just constantly nurturing that network, even if it's only a few people. I mean, I'm nurturing the piss out of it, even if we only got four or five people. As you grow beyond that, but to me, always the way you're going to get to the next level is hardly ever going to be just you. It's going to be somebody else, somebody introducing you to somebody else and being like, holy smokes, I've been missing this person my whole life. And now that I know them, like, I cannot believe how much we can achieve together. I mean, it just from us meeting each other. I mean, it has been incredible. I'm sure us meeting each other, there's always just something, as you put yourself out there, as you say, hey, I'm interested in what you're doing. And a lot of times people don't get that building relationships is a lot of time being interested in what the other person is doing. It's called giving a shit. And we confuse like, oh, it's so difficult. It's not. It's just, I care about you. How can I help you move your mission forward? Like, that's really all that it boils down to. It's so much easier to get along with people when you care about them, when you care about what they're doing. And so for everybody who listens, reach out to somebody. If there's somebody that you want to talk to, reach out to them. I know there's like big celebrities in the world and stuff like that, but they're normally DM away, an email away. Like, reach out to people. There are a lot of us who care that will respond. And if not, we have a team that will respond. And if it's a matter that we want to be interested in, we'll reach out to you. Please, everybody do that. You can jump to success so much faster with people on your side, with people on your team who you can converse with and care and make a difference. It's huge.
Yeah, and I also want to point out for people not to underestimate the power of connecting with fellow strugglers. So it doesn't always have to be a Sherpa. It doesn't always have to be somebody who's ahead of you, but just being in a community with people who are trying to do hard things and you see they do it and they don't die, that's huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
It's true. It gives you hope that it's possible. So I think that's a great piece of advice. Is there any other wisdom that you'd like to share and leave with our community on following your heart, following the art, creating your own business, anything that comes to mind? I really love the balance between like this creative soul and the sacred soul. I thought that was, I'm ready for book number 2.
Yeah,
I know I have to like make that, it's something things I'm just playing with because I started studying Kabbalah, like, cause I'm Jewish and that's been kind of,
I think we're
anyway.
friends. I think we're weirdo friends and I love
Okay.
you.
So anyway, what I wanted to leave everyone with is how I ended the book, which is keep marching forward. So I mentioned earlier, sometimes we're not ready to believe in the result, but we can believe that we are capable of continuing to take action, continuing to put one foot in front of the other, not marching in place, making forward progress, and not blaming your boots. In other words, if you don't get the result you want, it's not about the circumstance. Don't blame your boots. Don't blame the circumstance. Keep making forward progress. You will get there.
Just keep on keeping on.
That's right. Keep taking action and you will make progress.
I feel like action is a word that I'm using all the time in my coaching. It's like, we all know what to do, but are you doing it? Are you taking the action? I mean,
yeah. I mean, how many times coaching have you heard, oh yeah, that's something I've been meaning to do. I was like, okay.
I'm thinking about it.
Will you do it by next week? Because I'm holding you to it now.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't she remind you of Marvelous Miss Maisel?
Oh my God. Well, just her, like,
It's just like, I don't know.
It's a combination of like sophistication and also being a little bit fiery, a little
like,
spunky.
I will cut you.
Yeah, like, don't mess around with me. Welcome.
I am Mrs. Maisel. I'm like the Upper West Side Jewish girl. I just happened to be married.
Yeah, you have such a good energy, Miriam. This has been incredible getting to unpack a little bit of your wisdom and share how it's possible if you just believe. Anything else you feel called to share on the Elevated Life?
No, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. This has been a pleasure. Everyone, go follow her at, what's your Instagram?
We're still on Instagram. Okay. So if you want to find, the best place to find me, wherever you're listening to the Elevated Life, go listen to the Inspiration Place podcast. I talk about the same kinds of things as the conversations we had here today. And if you are still on Instagram, yeah, I'm Schulman Art. That's just teasing.
Perfect. I love it. And how can they get on your email list?
Okay. If you want the first chapter of the book, absolutely free, go to schulmanart.com/believe. And Schulman is spelled like school, SCHULMANART. I'm sure you're putting it in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll drop all the goodies below, and be sure to tag her, follow her thing, buy her book. It's all incredible. The wisdom is insane. And it's just been such a pleasure getting to showcase all of that here on the Elevated Life. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. Until then, we'll catch you next week.
Peace.
Peace.